In the last video, we looked at some guidelines for creating calculations in our workbooks. Now, you may be thinking that we could have just as easily done that with pivot tables, and in a lot of cases you would be correct. Pivot tables are very good for quickly generating data summaries, but they also have some potential downsides. Unless they are refreshed, they won't reflect updated data. If your data set is very large, pivot tables might lead to serious performance issues. And if you want to share your workbook with users that use a different spreadsheet software, they may not be able to work with them at all. So using calculations may seem a little bit slower to start with, but it does give you that extra control and flexibility. But where pivot tables are brilliant is if you want to double check your results. So here's your first practice challenge for the week. See if you can create a pivot table to generate our summary and double check that you've got the results correct. One last thing to keep in mind about pivot tables. It is generally a good idea to put them in their own worksheets, and as you can see, Alex has done just that. And that is because pivot tables do resize, and it can become a problem when they try and overlap each other. All right, what we're going to be focusing on this week is looking at how we can format our data. The purpose of using formatting is to make our workbooks clearer, more functional, and more readable. Now, to begin with, one of the first things we want is to format our headings because they break up the data and make it easier to understand where there are section divisions. And right at the top of each of our worksheets, we have a title. But at the moment, it is really tiny and it's not obvious that this is a heading at all. So that's the first thing I'm going to want to fix up. One strong recommendation I would offer for formatting is to use Excel's styles. Excel provides quite a reasonable selection, but keep in mind that the company you work with may also provide their own styles and they may have very specific requirements. Okay, let's select the title style to add some formatting to our heading here. The benefits of styles are that they are quick to use, and importantly, when I now go and do the same to my other worksheets, I'm guaranteed consistency. Not only that, but it also gives me flexibility to control the appearance of my worksheets from one place. If I now decided that I wanted all of my headings to actually be size 20, rather than manually having to go and change every sheet in the workbook, I could come back to my styles here, right-click on the title and choose Modify. And at this point, I can change any characteristic of the formatting, the font type, color, alignment, or even the number format. For now, I just want to make it size 20 and make it bold as well, and then I say OK. That has now changed that style within the whole workbook, and everything that uses that style will respond accordingly. You can also add and save your own style. So we've had a look at how we can use existing styles and how we can change them. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to select the top row, then come down here and I'm going to choose an accent color. You'll notice there are 6 accent colors, and depending on which version of Excel you have, they will stay consistent across the entire Office suite. We'll talk a little bit more about the accent colors shortly, but for now I'm going to choose accent 1, and then I'm going to make the font size larger to 28. And so that I won't have to do this again, I will now save this as a new style. So come back up to the Styles gallery, click the drop down and choose New Style. I'm going to call this style Main Title, and it will now save all the settings I've selected. If I want to apply the style to the titles in the other worksheets, I can group them first and apply the style to the other headings. Now, if you're working with group sheets, make it a golden rule to always ungroup them as soon as you've finished your task at hand. It is so easy to forget, and you could end up with a whole mess of unwanted changes. And just as a final step on our front sheet here, to center our heading, we will use the trick we introduced earlier and center the heading across a selection of cells in the top row. This way, we avoid merging any cells. Okay, next up, let's add some formatting in our data area. You will remember that we added some calculations earlier, and we don't want users to accidentally mess with them. So we're going to use formatting here to support the functionality of our workbook and highlight what is data entry and what is not. We can go a step further and lock those calculations, but to add a visible clue is a good first step. I'm going to select these top 3 values over here. Then I'm going to come into my styles and let's choose the inbuilt style output. And what that has done is distinguish the input data from the output. And because this data is in a table, as soon as we add a new row at the bottom, that styling will automatically be copied down. So you only have to do this once. Okay, so these are some quick tips for adding styles. Let's now come to our report, and you'll see Alex has completed his charts and added a few pivot tables here. And he also put in a few more details, and of course, we've got our heading here that we've just added. One of the other things you need to consider when adding formatting is the actual values in the cells themselves and how they are presented. And it actually makes the data much more readable if you do your number formats correctly. So for example, these are prices, so really they shouldn't have 3 or 4 decimal places. And a quick way to fix this is to come up to my number format and apply the currency format. And I want to copy that down to the top price as well. So I'm going to click my format painter once, click on the cell, and they're both formatted. My monthly change, this is actually a percentage, but it's really hard to read as it currently stands. So again, select both cells, click percentage, and then if I want to increase decimal places, I can just increase it by 1 or 2. So that is already making things a lot more readable. Now I also want to change the format of the date. I wanted to just say September 2017. Now for this, I'm going to need a custom number format. Let's come up to the number group. I'm going to click the drop down and come down to custom. And then what I actually want is no days. I want the month written as the full word September. So as I type in the M's, it actually gives you this sample up here. And then I type a space and I just want 17. So I'm going to put 2 Y's and then September 17, it's perfect. So say OK. And now to make the whole lot look a little bit more impressive, I'm going to come back up here and go for a heading 1, so once again it doesn't have to be time consuming. By using the styles we get the speed and we get consistency. Then I could add one more style here to my region focus row. And this time what I'm trying to do is use a style to just break up the data a little bit, and then the last thing we're going to look at with the styling is working with graphical elements. And while you don't want to have too much in the way of graphics detracting from your data or increasing the file size of your workbook, at the same time, a little bit of graphics helps break it up and often helps make your message a bit clearer. So you can see I've got a house just above my house column here, and I'd like to put a unit just above the units. So I'm going to click on my insert, and I've got this picture on my hard drive, and this should be with your workbooks. So I'm going to go to pictures and I'm choosing the unit GIF, and it comes in and it's huge. Excel will not constrain the size of your picture, so if you put in a massive picture, it's not going to try and size it to the page. Fortunately, when you pull it in, you will notice on the far right there's an option to set the width and height yourself. So if I just set my width to say 3 centimeters, that has automatically resized it to something a bit more manageable. And now I can make a small adjustment to get it to match the house. I would also like to slightly recolor this so it works with the colors in my workbook. So come up to the color, and like the house, I'm going to make it blue. Let's have a look at the pivot chart in our slices. Now the slices are great because they allow people to interact with the charts more easily. And we saw how to create a slicer in an earlier course. But what we want to do now is also make these look a little more attractive, and one of the problems with pivot charts is they come with these field buttons on them, and that reduces a lot of your chart area, and it may also give you users a little bit more control than you actually want them to have. So here's a quick tip. If you come up to your Analyze tab, turn off the field buttons, and you actually get that much more chart space. And of course, with our chart, you can also come to the format and you can add a nice border. And then with this slicer, I'd like that to be the same height as the 2 charts and nicely lined up. If I select my slicer and the chart to the right of it using my Shift key, on my Drawing Tools Format tab, I have the option to align my graphics. And this is quite a nice way of getting things lined up perfectly. So I'm going to choose Align Top. And now with very little effort, I have all my graphics the same size and nicely aligned, and that definitely aids with readability. Now the last thing we're going to look at is how we change the color scheme throughout our entire workbook quickly and easily. And it doesn't just apply to colors, that applies to fonts and it applies to effects as well. So for this we go to the Page Layout tab, and on the far left you'll see a big button called Themes. The actual themes will vary with versions, but the concept does not. The themes control your colors, fonts, and effects throughout the entire Excel workbook. But the nice thing is, the themes are also available across the whole Office suite, so they can help you guarantee a consistent look across all of your reports and projects. So if I click the Themes button, we're working in the Office theme, which is giving us these same colors every time. But if I go and hover over some of the other themes, you will notice that everything changes. The font scheme, the color scheme, everything. Now, if you don't want to change everything, you just want to change your fonts or your colors, you can do a bit of a mix and match. I'm just going to select this one here. And then if you want to, you can come and just change your fonts or just change your colors. So if I needed Calibri back again, I could still have my Calibri font, but I can have some new colors. So just to recap then, make sure you use your formatting to aid readability and functionality in your workbooks, and take advantage of Excel's built-in styles and themes. Use the styles, use the themes.